Welcome to the Thriving in Menopause class taught by Lisa Black. I'm going to introduce Lisa real quick. We'll get started. So as I was saying, Lisa is one of my favorite people on the planet. I learn every time she opens her mouth. I learn something new every time. She's very gracious with her time and gracious with her knowledge, and she's going to bring some amazing content to us tonight. No pressure, Lisa. So here is Lisa, and so this portion will be recorded. So once again, a reminder, those of you that are on live with us right now, you are being recorded. So please be mindful of your videos. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. This is one of the things I'm very passionate about teaching is on hormones. So just a real quick rundown. Sarah was so sweet in introducing me, but I've been with Young Living for 11 and a half years. And my life was changed so drastically because I got into it, like most people do, to do some healing. And it changed my life so much. I went back to school and became a certified health coach in 2016. And I never knew I liked science. I never knew I liked anything remote to this. So anyway, I love it. I have become a geek, I guess, so to speak. And I never thought that would happen, but it's one of my favorite things. And I love to talk about what I'm talking about tonight. And I just want to say, I'm really hoping, I don't know, but I'm really hoping that some of the younger girls will come in. And I'm going to explain to you why here in just a second. But I hope they will, because guess what? If we are blessed to live long enough, menopause affects everyone. So in this country, it's just so different. Menopause is supposed to be shared, I mean, an excitement, a joy, a rite of passage everywhere. I mean, it's not in the United States. Other countries, they have parties, they celebrate it. It's like you finally arrived. Here's, we're celebrating who you are. And here it's very dreaded. It's very scary thing. And so what I was saying is my goal is, and you'll hear a little of my story here, but my goal is if we can teach younger girls, then it can make all of the difference in the world. So, because they won't have to go into it like I did. So my generation, we were in the learning phase for all the doctors, all the things. We watched all the additions come in medicine, toxins, all kinds of things. And our mother's generation was, well, let me just say, they didn't really talk a whole lot about hormones or anything like that. So funny story, when my mother told me, she wanted to tell me about the birds and the bees, but she wanted to be better than her mother was because her mother never told her a thing. Thank goodness she had 5 older sisters. But my mother decided to tell me using roosters and hens. She skipped the birds and the bees and thought she was doing a really good thing. I had no clue what she was talking about, but she told me, and the next day I had to go to my Girl Scout movie. And this is where I was in total shock and came running through the backyard yelling at my mother, "I didn't know you meant people do it too." I was so upset. Well, and my mother, if she were still living, she would be very upset with me telling that story. But that's the equivalent of what we got. And so I can tell you that menopause was not mentioned at all. Some of you may be blessed that somebody taught you a lot, but overall, back in those days, those kind of things were talked about. So tonight, I want to give you some tips to help you with whatever stage you may be in. You may not even be close to there yet. And if not, I'm excited you're here because you're going to learn some things that will help you when you get there. You may be in perimenopause. And by the way, no one should really be in menopause before the age of 50. It's not really what we call normal to be in it before 50. Perimenopause, you're going to start having weird things happen probably later in your 40s, but you really shouldn't go full blown until you're in your 50s. Now, perimenopause. Perimenopause is where you're not really in menopause until you go an entire year without having your cycle. So perimenopause is, you may have one, this one may be longer. And after what we went through 4.5 years ago, one of the things it really did is that whole time it threw off women's cycles anyway. So if you are finding yourself starting this earlier, then you may find that it's because of that as well. So there's something I want to do, because there's something that that I want to talk about here, and that is we have been conditioned. From the time we're born, we are conditioned, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, we're conditioned what to believe, what to think, depending on where you're born, who you're born to, what they what you start learning, and where you are. The thing that's mind-blowing to me is that it's so many just stay in that and just keep staying conditioned by whatever the masses are of where they are. And the day our lives change is when we start to question, why have I always believed that? Or why did we always do that? You know the story of the mom cutting the ham off and nobody knew why. And they finally called the great grandmother because nobody knew why. And it was because it'll fit in my pan. So, I mean, that's a story that's been around a long time, but that really explains who we are, because we become conditioned. We allow things around us to condition us. So I'm going to go more into that in just a minute. But so for right now, here's what I want you to hear me say. We are conditioned because we have heard that menopause is you'll never feel good again, or sex is a thing of your youth. Don't be happy. I mean, that's not going to be a fun thing anymore. Or it's just how it is. Or your prime time is over. I mean, the list goes on. But menopause, and especially in this country, like I was saying, we've been conditioned that it's not a happy thing. And that's just not true. It's what we've been conditioned in. So because of that, right now, Sarah has already asked you about an oil. I want you to pick up, if you've got it there by your computer, I want you to pick out one of your favorite calming oils. Mine is, one of them is Believe, that I brought upstairs with me, because any of the tree oils instantly calm me. And I love the blend that's in this one. But I want you to get your favorite calming oil, and I want you to put a drop in your hand. You can put it on if you want, but I want you to breathe it deep. Just breathe it deep. And while you're doing that, I want you to start thinking about maybe what some of your conditioning has been about your body, about menopause, about hormones, about life, whatever it is. And we're going to talk about some things tonight that I hope break you out of maybe the way you've been conditioned to always think about something, only so you'll get growth and happiness and joy from that. Because once we can do that, it opens a whole new world. So when you smell this oil, and you're relating it to maybe some things that have bothered you, or maybe you don't feel good while you're going through menopause or perimenopause or whatever it is, I want you to remember this oil. And anytime you start to feel that, I want you to go get it, breathe it in deep, and remind yourself that you don't have to feel that way. You can recondition your mind to not have that connection to that. Does that make sense? Okay, so moving on. So Dr. Mark Hyman, who is one of my favorites to follow in functional medicine, Cleveland Clinic, uh, Dr. Mark Hyman said that one of the best things and one of the worst things that happened all at the same time in medicine in the 30s was when doctoring went to, what am I trying to say? I keep seeing everybody's comments. When doctoring went to specification, when a doctor went through, they knew every bit of the body. And then all of a sudden in the late 30s, early 40s, they started telling them they had to specialize. So he said that one of the worst things that happened was all of a sudden, after only 4 years, we were required to now specialize. And after only 4 years, once we specialized, we never went back and visited the rest of the body again. And that's a very sad thing. And that's why we are so blessed to have what we have, because Gary Young taught us about the whole body. So tonight, while we're talking, I want you to think about the whole body, because menopause is not just about our endocrine system. It's really not. And it's not just about one part of it. So tonight, I want us to think about the whole body so we can put it all together. So, excuse me. So we take better care of our cars than we do ourselves. Am I right? You would never, ever drive a car that didn't have oil in it. Or if there was no air in the tire, we just wouldn't do that. But our body needs things just like a car would. So why do we ignore our body? So in my day of perimenopause, tell you quickly, my menopause came along because of a hysterectomy, and because I trusted who I was conditioned by, my doctor, and didn't think outside the box. And at only, I think I figured out I was 44. At the same time, I had an entire hysterectomy and lost a foot of my colon. Now, I wasn't even in that bad a shape, but they convinced me I was. So during that time, though, this is quite a while back. We were looking for, looking for anything to help us. And I was anemic. I was not doing well. I didn't know that I had fibroid tumors, which I didn't know could also eventually dissolve down the road, especially after menopause. But I was scared to death by powers that be that this was what I had to do. I had started reading Suzanne Summers. Some of you on here may remember her books, and just desperate for something, because I couldn't find anybody that could help me or give me answers. Also, about that time was a doctor that I had been seeing on TV, and her name was Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she was an OBGYN. And I loved her. She was incredible because all of a sudden she was blowing it up. She was telling things that we'd never heard before. And so I started listening to her and realized too that at reading Suzanne Summers' book, I wanted to do something different. But again, think about this. We had no internet. We didn't have the phones that we could go back. This was right before all of that really broke. And so we didn't have a way of looking things up or Googling anything. So when I was going through this and didn't know where to turn, I just was craving these books, but I didn't know who to ask. But during this time, and I want to make this clear, during this time, there was something going on called HRT. And many of you have probably heard of that. And I cringe when I hear it, because what that meant back in the day was synthetic replacement of your hormones, because that's all they really knew. And during that time, more women were having heart attacks than ever before. and it was during this era. So I was so excited to read these books. And then Dr. Christiane Northrup one day told us that she gave us she told us about a medicine that everybody was taking. And she said, I'm really begging you all to not take this medicine. It was very popular, and some of you probably heard of it, and it was called Premarin. And we didn't really know what to do with this Premarin, but it was to help everybody that was going through any kind of menopausal symptoms. And she was just blowing the lid off of it because it was, and actually Gary Young wrote about this a few years later, but Premarin was actually a synthetic steroid hormone. And but let me tell you what she taught us on TV. I'll never forget this because it grossed me out, and I'm thankful I didn't ever take it. But Premarin stood for pregnant mare urine. And she even said if you take a pill and you put a drop of water on it, you will smell the urine. And that is what they were using to treat women for their hormones. It was like the number one across the board that everybody was getting. And so we had the heart attacks. So I ended up having the hysterectomy with this doctor that I was excited. She had Susan Summers' book on her desk. I didn't find out till later that she had no idea. She'd not cracked the book open. By then it was too late. So one day when I was sobbing, laying across my washer, because I didn't want my family to hear me, and I was on the phone begging for somebody to help me on a cordless phone, begging that doctor for the third time they wanted to raise my estrogen levels, which was only messing me up really bad. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So when you have a hysterectomy, you go into menopause overnight. So that's when I was like, I'm done. And I had a general practitioner that I was seeing that I loved. He was a sweet man. And he said something to me that I'm going to give you my first tip here that has nothing to do with a supplement or anything, but it's something that changed my life. And he said, you know what? I don't know what to tell you about who to go see, but I do have this paper from the Sunflower Shop, which was a vitamin shop. And he said, there's articles in here about these hormones that are natural and they're compounded. So why don't you call one of the compounding pharmacies and get the name of some of the doctors? And that's exactly what I did. I worked backwards. So I looked up in the paper, like he said, that little paper he had, called them, asked them who some of the doctors were, and I found one of the greatest doctors because he thought outside the box. He was into all natural meds. He was an MD, but he went way natural with all of that and was turned out to be a big blessing for me. So that is a tip for you that I would like to encourage you. If you're perimenopausal, you think you're menopausal, even if you're not, you really need to have a baseline of where your hormone levels are. So I highly recommend that you find someone that you can trust, that you like, that will do like a blood workup on you and saliva test. And saliva is going to be huge. I'll tell you about that more in a second. But once you know your levels and you know what's out of sync or in sync or where you are, then you'll better know how to supplement to take care of yourself. So, and the second tip that I have for that is please don't ever forget that that doctor is working for you. And so you can take a list of questions, tell them, and I encourage you to write down how you're feeling during the week. Maybe because we forget, maybe there's something you took and you felt worse, or maybe there's something that you ate, or maybe there's just you're exhausted and you were exhausted for 3 days and you don't know why. If you have those questions, you write them down and you take that piece of paper with you. And my doctor actually told me he looked forward to when I came because I always had my questions and we could go over them. And I didn't have to sit there and go, oh, there was one more thing. There was one more thing. And he was able to help me with everything that was bothering me. Remember, and if you have older parents that go to doctors all the time, remind them that the doctor works for them because you're paying them. And you can ask all the questions you want and they can help you. So that's your second tip. So I used their natural replacements in compounding pharmacy. And again, you don't want synthetic, but I saw, I used that until God blessed me and opened the doors to Young Living. And it was such a blessing to find this company for many reasons. But I mean, our oils, our supplements, but also our community. Doctors, nurses, naturopaths, health coaches, physical therapists, so many people that had so much that they could offer and help. And I love that we are a family that helps each other. And that is a huge blessing. So, where do we go from here? Let's now talk about the details of menopause and the hormones and what's actually going on. So, where do we go from here? So, remember the car. Like I said, you would never think about. So, I want to, okay, let me start here. So, in the front of your car, you have an engine and it has to have oil, right? And that oil has to stay at a certain level. In the back of your car, you have your gas tank that you fill up. So just imagine for a minute that that's your body, because it really is. So for instance, cholesterol. Cholesterol has been made an enemy, and guess what? God created our bodies with cholesterol. And one of the things that's so incredible about cholesterol is it jumpstarts our hormones. So it is our cholesterol is made in our liver, and then it goes out to do various things in the body. And part of that is to jumpstart our hormones. Namely, it jumpstarts our prenolone and our DHEA. But remember the conditioning that I was talked about, that we have been conditioned to think bad about cholesterol, all the way back to when my husband and I first got married many, many, many years ago. Cholesterol was bad. Eggs were bad. All these things were bad. And it turns out we were conditioned because we have to have cholesterol. Our body is made with cholesterol. So it actually jumpstarts two hormones that are also part of what we need for all the others to work together. So let's imagine that the front of the car where that oil is we've got our cholesterol that's going to start taking care of everything, and from that it's going to produce all the other things that need to connect, because in the tank back here we've got our estrogen and we've got our testosterone and we've got our progesterone, but we've got to have from the front of that car, we got to have that DHEA and that prenolone, and all of that comes together. Those jumpstart these to work. So that cholesterol creates a steroid hormone called prenolone, and then DHEA, and all of that is going to help. That's in the gas tank in the back. So when you go to a doctor, what I noticed for years is they only talk to you about the three in the tank. They only talked about the estrogen and the testosterone and the progesterone, if you were lucky. And if they knew that part, that's all they talked about. But what they didn't realize is if the oil in the front of the car wasn't filled, those weren't going to work. So we have to, when we know that, it's incredible. When we know that we need cholesterol, then maybe we can look at maybe what we've been doing, that we were conditioned that we were scared of cholesterol. It's not the enemy. Now, you go get your blood work done and all that and see where your ratios are. But just know that we're made with that. So prenolone is the precursor to creating the rest of the hormones. And it's a steroid hormone. And I love it because Gary Young talks about that one a lot. And that he got so excited that from that he created a cream called prenolone cream that we still have. And that can be an incredible little miracle in a tube that can help us to feel better. The prenolone helps to jumpstart our DHEA. And that is going to help us with, all of these help us with our cognitive skills, and in fact, well, I'll do that later, but it helps us with so many of the different skills, our cardiovascular, all of that. So isn't that ironic that cholesterol is deemed the enemy from a cardiovascular standpoint? But we have to have that to jumpstart the hormone that's actually going to help our heart. Do you hear that? That's why I talk about conditioning, because there's so much that we've been conditioned to believe. So we're going to push those away. Breathe your oil. So the prenolone cream is one that Gary loves. And like I said, he talked about a lot. And so we want to get all of these in line. And this is where the menopause, we can transition into menopause like the other countries I was talking about, if we are taking care of something huge. So in our hormones, we're going to have, I'm looking here to make sure I don't get ahead of myself. But one of the reasons that menopause has gotten such a bad rap is because of stress. Stress is what is hurting, everything pretty much. And we live in a very, very stressful world. But your prenolone and your DHEA that are going to jumpstart these others, the everything starts in the brain. The hormones start in the brain, and the brain is telling everything where it needs to go. So your pituitary, your adrenals, let me grab this here really quick to make sure I'm saying this right. It must be over here. But your adrenals are dependent. Your pituitary is talking to all of the other, it goes down the line, and it's talking to your thyroid, and it's talking to your adrenals. And all of these have to work together and be strong. And when they are, we can slide into menopause easily. So let me go back to stress, which is one reason why I had you breathe a stress oil. So I want you to imagine like a Navy ship. And I know that may sound weird to you, but go with me here. So, a Navy ship is ginormous. And just think about the top of that ship. A couple of thousand sailors will be on that ship, and they'll all over that ship. They'll all have different places that they're in charge of. Some will be closer to the mast area. Some will be up where the guns are. Some will be back where the life jackets are. Some will be. There's places that takes that whole entire Navy ship for it to go smoothly across the water. And it takes every man at his position, all the men at their position, for that to go well. Let's say that over here at the engine area on the top of that ship, there's a sudden spark and a fire. And an alarm goes off, and everybody takes off running to where that event happened on the ship so that they can put it out, see what's going on, help that situation, and calm it down. And once it's done, then everybody goes back to where they were stationed on the ship. And they finish over here their cleanup, and the ship keeps going along smoothly. Well, what happens with us, and it's really sad, is that that's how it used to be in my grandparents' day, and really even my parents' day early on. But the more things have gotten complicated in our world, that big ship, what has happened is that's our body. And when there is an alarm that goes off, that something is happening in our body, everything runs to it, runs to that area, because they're supposed to, and they're supposed to be helping right there where that's going off. And then they're supposed to all go back in the body where they were supposed to be. But the problem is we live in so much stress that they don't go back. Everybody stays over here and they stay upset and stressed out and they don't know to go back. And so our body stays in a fit of stress and upset. So the adrenals are now on overload. It is the adrenals that are going to get us into menopause successfully. And so the reason why we are struggling is because we have all through the years kept our body so uptight and so upset that the adrenals are worn out. They're shot. So when it's time for them to naturally take us into menopause, they don't have anything left because they're worn out. I hope that makes sense. So what we have to do is we have to take care of all of these. I want you to imagine with me an umbrella that when you open an umbrella, in order for it to open, that little top on the outside at the top, it has to be there for that umbrella to open. And on the top of that umbrella is your prenolone and your DHEA. And remember I said, if those weren't working, nothing else is. And under here, under the umbrella, is your estrogen, your testosterone, and your progesterone. So we want to make sure that these are all good because remember, they're talking to the brain, and the brain is talking to the thyroid, the adrenals. And so a lot of this has to do with our mindset. We have to have our mindset to where it can handle the things that are going on. Another thing is when we're learning to handle the stress is the oil blend endoflex is a game changer. It's an adaptogen, and it's something that will help your body to adjust during this difficult time. Because, like I said, everything is like this, and the endoflex is something that's really great that it can adapt and help the body to go, oh, okay, I'm okay. And so we want to use this. One of my favorite places is over the thyroid, the neck. And I put a roller ball on top of my endoflex just so I can roll it as much as I want to. And put it on there in the mornings. Nutmeg is in endoflex, but I also I love to use nutmeg on its own. And nutmeg comes in our vitality oil, and I love to drop it under my tongue. And then also we have a wonderful blend that's called Energy. My kids hate it. I don't know why. It doesn't bother me, but I love it. But let me explain this too, that your adrenals that I'm saying, that is what's going to get you into menopause if they're treated well. Your adrenals are tiny glands that sit on top of your kidneys. So if you feel your rib cage right here and you trace your ribs to the back, your kidneys are right under your rib cage there. And on the top of those kidneys are those little bitty adrenal glands. And they're so tiny. So start thinking about your tiny little adrenal glands that have to handle all the stuff going on that Navy ship. And they're worn out. So start thinking about how tiny they are, and you want to take care of those tiny little glands so that they'll help you in menopause. Your whole body will thank you when it does that. But anyway, they're sitting right there, and I love to take Energy, the blend, and put a couple of drops in my hands, and I just, in the mornings when I get out of the shower, and I just hold my hands over that area and just stand there and hold it for a few minutes, and then breathe it deep. And I can tell when I don't use it, which is very rare. But if I have a day that I didn't start out like my usual, I can tell. Makes a huge, huge difference. Remember that when we start using things like that, it can take 3 to 4 months. Now, hear me again. Again, we're conditioned. Remember, we're conditioned that, hey, take this pill because in 20 minutes, you'll feel better. Hey, take this pill 3 times a day because by probably 2 days, you're going to feel great. Hey, take this pill. Everything we have been conditioned since we were little that that's all it takes. So when we move into natural medicine, we don't understand. I watched a girl the other day at our event that they passed around some oil, and she took it and did that. That that's not even a drop of oil. You have to drop it in your hand. And if you ever go back and read Gary Young's stories, and there's many, and especially in the New Legacy book, but he drenched people. If something was really going on, just put it on you a lot, and you will tell an amazing difference. So you have to use a lot of it, but you have to remember that you've been conditioned that you are supposed to be completely well within a few days. And when you're not, you're done. No, 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 no. You have to think about how long it took your body to get in a bad place. And you've got to walk back out with it so you can get it well. And that can take weeks, or it could take 3 to 4 months. So be patient with it, because if you're not, it'll stress you out even more. So now let me switch to estrogen. I want to talk really quick about, under the umbrella here, the estrogen. What happens is the adrenals get so flooded when they're stressed out. Then they're so flooded with so much estrogen that, you know, this spare tire that you look around, and men and women have it. We have so much stored cortisol that is from our adrenals, and the estrogen has no place to go, and our fat cells have stored the extra estrogen, and so we're in a constant loop of, we can't lose the weight, we have this, all of this right here, and it's because the estrogen, the excess estrogen, has no place to go, because the adrenals are full, because they've got too much cortisol. Are you hearing how this is happening? So it really is, go back to when I said I'm going to talk about the whole body. It really is that we have to start thinking about not just, oh my gosh, my ovaries are acting up, my period's weird. And, you know, it's not that. It's the whole body. It's what we're doing to the whole body that we need to bring down so that we can calm the body down, so the body that God made incredibly can do what it was designed to do. So when we, one of the things we need to remember, and I need to hurry, is getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night will help to elevate. It will help to help you get, if you don't, if you don't get enough sleep at night, that's going to elevate your cortisol, which will escalate your estrogen. Now, you remember I said that cholesterol jumpstarts your hormones. We have a lot of hormones in our body. Did you know that ghrelin and leptin is a hormone? Ghrelin is what makes your stomach growl to tell you you're hungry. It's a hormone. Leptin is what tells you you're full. Those also get upside down. And so can you see how everybody's on this crazy wheel just going around and around, because it messes with all of them. So we want to make sure that we're sleeping, and don't forget, we've already done a class, I believe, on our sleep night essence that's incredible, taken with magnesium, our super mag at night. That alone can help your body to start calming down the estrogen, the cortisol levels, and giving you more sleep. Nutrition is key. Nutrition is key. Oh, one more thing I wanted to tell you right here before I leave this is adrenal rebuilding. Progescence plus and sclerescence are your best buddies, and clary sage and sage. These can help to build the adrenals. So you want your focus to get through perimenopause into menopause easier. So you want to use these to help start rebuilding, and envision calming and rebuilding your adrenals. And I know that sounds crazy, but what's the opposite? The opposite is we're envisioning everything that could go wrong, everything that's driving us crazy, all of our stress levels being so up. So envision the opposite and how you want to bring this back in. Back before 3 years before I found Young Living, I had complete adrenal failure. My doctor told me then, my think outside the box doc, I cried all the way home that day because I finally felt like somebody found what was wrong. But it was, I had to do the saliva test. I told you, remember that. And it showed him my adrenals were shot. And he told me, and I was having to see about my mother. My three siblings weren't helping. It's a long story. But he told me that day, he said, if I have to write a prescription that says no more mom, and you give a copy to every sibling, he said, Lisa, if you don't get your adrenals under control, you will have a stroke or a heart attack or cancer. And it can happen like that. That's how important the adrenals are. That's how important it is to wake up and listen to this about calming the stress in our body. So I'm going to move on real quick for lack of time. That nutrition is key. And remember, I told you to think whole body. Did you hear me say that I had a hysterectomy and a foot of my colon removed at the same time? I now know that those were speaking to each other. I now know I didn't really have to go through what I did, but I didn't think I had an alternative. I was conditioned to think that I might die. I was told that if I didn't do this. But those are working together. And because my gut was so messed up, it was throwing off my adrenals. It was throwing off my other hormones in my body. And thus I developed fibroids and I had all these things going on. Remember, you have to think full body. Think of your whole body. So nutrition is key. We want the gut happy. Remember that our bodies need vitamin D. And I'm going to tell you something that's absolutely insane to me. You can Google it, but I just looked it up, that the Endocrine Society, that would be your hormone society, just came out and said that vitamin D is not important to the body, that people were wrong. And they're very, very wrong. And look what we just went through about vitamin D. Vitamin D and vitamin B, especially B6, are super, super important because of keeping things where they need to be. Along with clary sage and lady sclerol, these will help promote your estrogen balance. Progestin, okay, so I'm in my final right here. I'm going to say one more thing, and then Sarah, I've got some specifics to give. I don't know if you want us to go, but let me finish one last thing for the whole body. Life 9, you need to be on Life 9 or Mighty Pro for your gut to keep it happy. You need green omegas so that remember I talked about the entire car and the oil. Well, you need to keep that oil moving in the body. So you need your green omegas. You need your super B, your super D. There's many more, and you can decide if you want me to go ahead and do them here, Sarah, or tell you. But one more last tip I want to give you. If you do choose to go to a think outside the box doc, like I told you how to find, please keep this in mind. That doctor will help you get the saliva test. And actually, Dr. Purser has taught me you don't really need a doctor for the blood work or the saliva test. And if you want to get in touch with me, I can tell you how to do that. But all that to say, the saliva will help you know more about where your adrenals are. But the one last thing I want to tell you, if you choose to go and get a doctor to get you a panel and figure all things out, if they talk to you about natural pellets, I'm just going to highly recommend that you really, really think hard about that. And let me tell you why. And you say, what's a pellet? They can take the hormones, even though they're natural, they put them in a pellet and then they go under the skin and they'll insert that pellet. The only problem with that, and this is what I ran into, they did this with estradiol for me, and it was natural, but it was too much. And once they put that in there, they cannot take it out. So it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months for that to completely get out of your system. And you can be really, really miserable. So I never let them do that again. I highly recommend, and I know people that do them because they just don't want to deal with it. But listen, it doesn't take but that long to rub on a cream or an oil or whatever, but then you have control over it. But I'm telling you, pellets are a very, very common thing. So really think that out, and they may be perfect for you. But I know people that they weren't, and then when they're in there until they dissolve. So okay, Sarah, do you want us to go to finish? I've got a list here of supplements, or do you want me to keep going?
Let's pause for a second and answer a couple questions, if you're okay.
Well, yeah, but I want to make sure that we get to the oils and a couple of the supplements that are very, very needed. So
Okay, you
I
got
didn't
it.
know if you want that.
What some of the questions were about, were some of that.
Yeah, quite possible. So if I ask a question and you're about to cover it, then we'll keep going then we'll go to the next question. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. Can you expound on prenolone cream, when and not to use? And I did share in the chat the directions that are on the Young Living's website. So if you have anything outside of what they suggest,
yes. Okay. I will tell you, in the legacy book, I saw y'all talking about the legacy book. Gary actually used it because men have prenolone also. We have all of them together, but they're just in different forms. But the prenolone and the DHEA are jump starters for both male and female. And he highly recommend, and he was really struggling. He was putting in 18 and 19 hours in the fields and different things, and he really messed himself up. So he recommends doing the prenolone, which is going to be the pregnenolone. It's going to jumpstart that pregnenolone above, remember, at the top of the umbrella. He says to put it on a soft area of the skin for it to absorb. So and again, you would use it. The beauty of using that cream is you could use it for a couple of weeks and see how it's affecting you. But what it should be doing is jump starting any of the others that may be low for you. And it is a steroid hormone. And so Gary was excited to study and find out that we had a natural steroid hormone in the prenolone.
So do we keep taking it?
Yeah.
Is it like is it ongoing?
Ongoing. That's what I said. You can use it ongoing. It's a very small amount that you use. And it's also, while we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and add this one, but he also created, after that, he created Regenolone, and it's the prenolone base, the prenolone plus base. And what he was so excited is they started discovering that with certain oils added to that, it also started helping, how can I say this? I'll just say the spine system, the skeletal system of the body. It started helping and repairing a lot of skeletal issues. And I will say that in menopause, a lot of times women start complaining of a hip ache or an arm ache. It's very common that women in menopause get to where they can't lift their arm. That's where Regenolone over prenolone may be better. And I will tell you there that long story, but I had a nurse damage under my arm on my first pregnancy when I couldn't nurse, and she pushed on the gland, and to this day it bothers me. Regenolone cream changed everything for me with this under my arm. Amazing. And you just put like the size of a pea, and it's pretty amazing. Anybody, is there another one, Sarah?
So along those same lines, if a woman is in perimenopause or skipping cycles, should she still use prenolone plus cream?
Yes. And again, I would use it for 2 to 3 weeks, see how it goes. Because again, what it's doing is it's regulating that top hormone that is probably out of balance. But again, please make sure you get somebody to get your blood work so you can see where that is, because they should be able to show you where your prenolone and your DHEA is.
Okay. Trying to keep up with the questions here. I've got a list for you. It's not a long list. Endoflex, there were some questions about how to use Endoflex if you've had, or can you, if you've had hysterectomy or if you're postmenopausal. And I know, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Because even if you've had your thyroid removed, for example, you still have the nerve endings to the thyroid.
Yes.
So your body doesn't know the thyroid is gone.
Right.
It's still firing those nerve endings. So using the Endoflex is a great idea.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was in my notes and I missed it. But yes, because your brain still knows that your thyroid's supposed to be there too. And so, and the nerve endings, everything. So yes, you want to use it over those areas, even like your clary sage and your sage. You can even use where your ovaries would have been, in the belly button, and then over where the ovaries would have been, because your body still knows they're supposed to be there and somebody stole them.
Yeah. And then, okay, we did that one. Suggestions for someone who has had a thyroidectomy or postmenopause. I think we just covered that. Oh, do any of these increase cancer risk? Was a question we wanted to address.
No. Okay, so how do I do this? I've never had to do that. Again, this is why I opened with conditioning. We have been conditioned that those things can do that. But what it is what we've done out here. What we're using that's straight from God's earth is really, really a blessing. And where you maybe wouldn't want to use your estrogen, natural estrogen, I use clary sage, because clary sage is it's an adaptogen. And so again, it's gonna the body's gonna take what it needs and slough off what it doesn't. And so you still, and this is where I really have a hard time when I'm talking to somebody about this, because I don't want to tell them what to do, but what I do want to remind them of is God created you with all those hormones. They were there for a reason. Mm-hmm. They get upside down by what we do to them in this life, in this world. But just like the cholesterol has been made such a bad thing, God created us with all of that for a reason. So I just had a woman that wrote me and said, well, I would have come to your class, but it's too late. Because she was saying, I'm so menopausal, I'm past it. And it's like, it's never too late, because your hormones can, even though they're not going to be the same as when you were young, your hormones can still get out of balance till you die. And so you will feel better, live better, and keep a better balance in your body, and keep those bad C things away, the cancers and stuff, if you're balancing and taking care of all of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask one more. Well, I've got 2 more questions on my list here. And then before I ask those 2 questions, I'm going to ask you a question, Lisa.
Okay.
Because I know we have more to cover, and I know we have lots of questions. The collab team has been chatting. Would you be willing to do a part 2 to this, a continuation, so that we can have a part 1 recorded and a part 2 recorded for people?
Sure.
Because I know that you have more to tell us that's going to blow our minds. And we all want to hear it. And we don't want you to feel rushed to get through the rest of what you need to get through. because this is so good.
Oh,
Are
Yeah.
you, are
okay.
you
This
okay
is
with that?
so needed. People
Very
need to
much
know
needed.
information.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
yay. I would love to. I know,
Okay.
because that's why I tell my story, because I know it's needed, because we've just not been taught or told. So
Yeah.
I would be happy to. I'd be honored to.
Okay, so let me go ahead and stop our recording. Give me just a moment.
Okay.
Part 2 is coming, y'all.